Welcome to My Irish Radio, music and culture news, your connection to everything happening in the world of Irish music and culture. I'm Jamie Flanagan. Each episode will share the latest news from Ireland's vibrant music scene, from traditional and folk to rebel ballads, pub tunes, Celtic rock, and today's top Irish pop. We'll also bring you updates on festivals, cultural events, and people keeping Irish heritage alive around the world. And remember, My Irish Radio is more than just a station. It's your community, your soundtrack, your voice. You can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com and through the links in the podcast description below. Here's the best part. You can be part of it. Host your very own show on My Irish Radio. Choose your playlist, share your stories, make My Irish Radio your Irish Radio. Let's get into what's happening this week in Irish music and culture.
You know, usually when we think about preserving a country's culture, we kind of picture something very quiet and sterile, like a museum.
Right, yeah, like artifacts behind glass.
Exactly. You walk into this hushed, temperature-controlled room, and there's, I don't know, a piece of ancient pottery. Or maybe a dusty stringed instrument sitting behind thick glass.
With a little brass plaque.
And it tells you what it used to mean to people, centuries ago. It's treated entirely like an artifact.
Well, I mean, it is treated like an artifact because that is, frankly, incredibly safe.
Right.
When you put a neat little frame around history or put it behind glass, it becomes static. It makes it exceptionally easy to categorize, to study, and most importantly, it stops evolving.
You just look at it. You don't participate in it.
Exactly. You're an observer.
But then you look at a culture that is actually alive, something breathing and kicking, and suddenly, that museum glass just shatters.
Oh, completely.
You realize that true culture isn't quiet at all. It is loud. It's messy. It is full of contradictions. And honestly, nowhere is that more obvious right now than in Ireland.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It is late April 2026, and today you and I are going into an absolutely fascinating stack of sources. Specifically, a comprehensive music and culture report straight out of Ireland.
And it is a dense report.
It really is. And our mission today isn't just to recap the latest news or list off a bunch of upcoming gigs for you. We want to investigate the actual engine of this culture right now.
The underlying mechanics of it.
Right. We are going to explore this dizzying tension between a country that is exporting a massively popular global identity to the rest of the world while simultaneously fighting tooth and nail to sustain its modern artists at home.
And preserving its fading everyday history, too.
Yes. So, okay, let's unpack this.
It's a remarkable dynamic to examine, really, because when you read through these sources, you immediately see this dual nature of culture playing out in real time.
How do you mean?
Well, on one hand, you have a cultural scene that is loudly, almost aggressively, moving forward into the future. It's completely redefining its boundaries.
Yeah.
Yet simultaneously, it remains deeply, inextricably anchored by its past. It's this constant tug of war between the massive global stage and the local street corner.
And understanding how those two forces interact, I guess, tells us a lot about how any modern society maintains its soul.
Exactly.
So I think the best place to start is the heartbeat of any culture, which is the music.
Naturally.
If you look at the music scene in Ireland right now, in April 2026, it is aggressively redefining itself. But it's doing so while standing on these incredibly strong traditional roots.
Yeah, the traditional foundation is rock solid.
Right. Like, for instance, the sources highlight a brand new project by fiddle player Dylan Foley.
And his accompanist, Coleman Connolly.
Yes, Coleman Connolly. They have an album called Tennessee Sessions, and the report describes it as this stunning, driving fiddle record.
You can almost hear the rosin on the bow just reading about it.
You really can. And it's got that foot-tapping rhythm. Then you also have the sophomore album from the singer-songwriter duo Evelyn and DeKey.
Ah, yeah. Wait Up.
Wait Up, exactly. Which features this really beautiful acoustic single called Some Comfort. Plus, over in County Clare, a traditional music group just won the highly prestigious Seansa Uilleann competition.
And for anyone unfamiliar, Seansa Uilleann isn't just, your average battle of the bands.
Right.
Not at all. It is essentially the absolute pinnacle of traditional musical mastery for young musicians in Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, it requires a profound understanding of the traditional repertoire, complex arrangements, absolute technical precision. That is the bedrock. That's the heritage being carried forward with incredible skill by a new generation.
Right, so you have this profound reverence for the past, but then You turn the page in the report, and the contrast practically gives you whiplash.
It really does.
Because operating in that identical cultural space, you have a Carlo artist named Sexy Tad.
Yes. Sexy Tag.
And Sexy Tag just announced a 12-date UK and Ireland tour running from October to December 2026. Do you want to tell them the title of this tour?
It is the S. Lutrad Tour.
The S. Lutrad Tour.
A brilliant, inherently provocative title. It just commands immediate attention.
It's incredible marketing, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. You've also got these indie sleaze disco events popping off recently at the Workman's Club in Dublin.
And over in Galway, too.
Right, Galway. And publications like Hot Press and Golden Plaque are constantly injecting new blood into the scene. They're highlighting fresh, edgy, heavily electronic acts like Goldbug and Devil on their weekly playlists.
Yeah, the scene is incredibly vibrant.
But wait, I have to challenge this a little bit. Calling a tour Zlutrad or hosting indie sleaze nights, isn't that just a marketing gimmick?
You think it's just for shock value?
Well, I mean, are we sure these artists are actually engaging with the tradition, or are they just using the aesthetic to sell tickets to a Gen Z audience that wants to feel rebellious?
See, what's fascinating here is that tradition, by its very definition, is never static.
Okay.
If it doesn't evolve, if it doesn't get challenged or, mutated by the youth, it dies. It ends up behind that museum glass you mentioned earlier.
Right. It just becomes an artifact.
Exactly. What we are seeing with an artist like Sexy Tag isn't a cynical marketing gimmick. It's an active dialogue with the tradition.
Oh, interesting.
They are taking the core musical language they grew up with and applying it to their current modern reality.
So it's less like a family dinner where the traditional grandparents are glaring at the punk rock grandkids and more like, I don't know, open source software.
Open source software. I like that.
Like where the original traditional tunes are the core code and these new artists are just constantly writing wild, chaotic new patches on top of it just to make it run on modern operating systems.
That is a much more accurate way to look at it, yeah. The core code remains intact, but it's being adapted to function in a new environment.
Makes sense.
And you can actually see this integration perfectly at the upcoming Belfast Festival this summer.
Oh, right in the report.
Yeah. The lineup brilliantly merges the old and the new. You have contemporary genre-bending acts like Tempest Cell and NXNW.
Okay.
And they are sharing the bill with traditional musicians like Connor Mallon. And Mallon is an uilleann piper.
And for anyone picturing like the big Scottish bagpipes played on a hillside, the uilleann pipes are quite different, right?
They're very different. You play them sitting down, for one.
Right.
And you use a set of bellows strapped under the arm to pump the air rather than blowing into a mouthpiece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have a softer, incredibly complex, almost haunting tone. But the point is, the festival organizers aren't cordoning off a master of this highly complex historical instrument from the contemporary electronic acts.
They aren't treating him like a museum exhibit.
No, they are presenting them as a continuum.
They are saying this is all us. All of it belongs. Which makes total sense when you think about it.
Yeah. And the sources back this up historically, too. They feature this great profile of Claire Grogan.
From the post-punk band Altered Images.
Exactly. She discusses the profound lifelong legacy of having an Irish musical influence growing up.
Yeah.
And think about it. That post-punk era in the late 70s and early 80s was viewed as chaotic, noisy, and rebellious in its time, too.
People were probably asking the exact same questions I just asked. Like, Is this just a noisy gimmick?
Almost certainly. Yet it was deeply informed by the culture it sprang from. So the evolution we are seeing now with SL Tetrad or Indie Sleaze Disco, it's just the 2026 iteration of a mutation process that has been happening for decades.
The music is thriving, it's mutating, and it is undeniably alive.
Absolutely.
But, that brings us to a major question of mechanics.
The money.
Always the money. We know how Sexy Tad is mutating the music, but how does an artist actually fund a 12-date SLT trad tour in a post-punk world?
It's not easy.
No.
Yeah.
So let's follow the money here. Because if we move from the creation of the art to the economic reality of the artists, the report reveals a massive structural boom happening right alongside a terrifying financial squeeze.
The economic reality of being a creator right now is really central to understanding this culture's survival. The friction between institutional funding and ground-level survival is intense.
Yeah, so on the boom side, the Minister for Culture, Communications and Sport, an Irish member of Parliament named Patrick O'Donovan, he just announced over 1.4 million euros in funding.
Through Culture Ireland?
Right, through Culture Ireland. And this is a massive coordinated investment. It's actively supporting 208 projects across 44 different countries.
44 countries.
We're talking music, theater, literature, film. Ireland is practically blanketing the globe with its artistic output, ensuring that its cultural voice is heard from Tokyo to New York.
It is a highly sophisticated export operation.
Yeah.
The government clearly recognizes that Irish culture is one of the nation's most valuable global commodities. It generates immense soft power and international goodwill.
You're listening to My Irish Music and Culture News, brought to you by My Irish Radio, streaming the best in Irish and Celtic music all day, every day. From classic jigs and reels to the latest Irish rock and pub favorites, we celebrate the sound of Ireland worldwide. Want to be more than a listener? Be a host. Share your love for the Irish music by hosting your own show on My Irish Radio. It's easy to get started. Just send us an email, myirishradio@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com. Make My Irish Radio your Irish radio.
But let's bring you, the listener, into this for a second. Take a look at your phone right now. You are likely paying for a music streaming subscription.
Most of us are.
The sources tell us that Spotify subscribers in Ireland are facing price hikes of up to 15% in the coming weeks.
A significant jump.
Right. And your assumption as a consumer is probably that when your subscription price goes up, that extra money is finally going to support the artists you actually listen to.
That would be the logical assumption, yes.
But the Irish Music Rights Organization, IMRO, is waving a massive red flag here. They are pointing out the extremely high value of the local streaming market, but they are demanding a content levy.
And understanding the mechanism of that levy is crucial, because IMRO isn't just asking for a vague donation. No, the streaming model operates on a global pro rata system, meaning all the money goes into one giant pool and is divided by total streams globally.
So the big pop stars take almost everything.
Exactly. A local independent artist gets fractions of a penny, while international megastars sweep up the vast majority of the revenue. So IMRO is demanding a structural intervention, a targeted tax on the gross revenues that streaming giants make within Ireland.
And where would that money go?
It would be ring-fenced and redistributed directly into a fund specifically to support local Irish creators.
Because right now, the supply chain is fundamentally broken.
He's severely broken.
And on top of the streaming issue, the report highlights a pilot arts support scheme.
Oh, yes. The basic income pilot.
Right. The government tried to implement this program to provide long-term basic income to artists, but participants are incredibly concerned.
Because of the administration of it.
Exactly. The mechanism of the scheme is apparently a bureaucratic nightmare. The eligibility rules to prove you are a, quote, professional artist are incredibly harsh.
It creates this absurd paradox.
How so?
Well, you essentially have to prove you are already generating significant income from your art in order to qualify for the financial assistance designed for artists who aren't making enough money to survive.
That makes zero sense.
It's a system heavily bogged down by bureaucracy at the precise moment artists need agility. They are trying to quantify and measure artistic output using the metrics of a corporate accounting firm.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the 1.4 million euros meant to send artists to 44 countries, versus the reality of a local artist trying to survive a Spotify price hike that doesn't benefit them.
While drowning in red tape.
Right, while drowning in red tape. It's like a company building a gorgeous, glittering flagship store in Times Square, but the actual factory back home where the goods are being handmade can barely afford to keep the electricity on.
That's exactly it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at a profound clash of systems.
Yeah.
You have institutional government support colliding head-on with the immediate, unforgiving reality of corporate streaming monopolies.
Right.
The global market readily recognizes the immense value of this culture, but the supply chain itself, the individual independent artists pouring their souls into driving fiddles or indie sleaze discos, is severely bottlenecked.
And this is why IMRO's call for a content levy is so significant, right?
Exactly. It's an attempt to forcibly correct a market failure. Without that intervention, the excess capital generated by a 15% price hike just vanishes into the corporate ether.
It doesn't trickle down to Evelyn and Dephone.
No. Or Sexy Tag or Goldbug. The tension here is palpable.
Yeah.
How do you sustain a globally demanded cultural output when the domestic economic soil it grows in is being aggressively depleted?
Which is such a vital question.
Oh,
And it actually leads us right into the final, maybe most profound part of our deep dive today.
the preservation aspect.
Yes, because this financial struggle to protect modern artists is intimately connected to a much broader theme in our sources, the concept of preservation.
Right.
It's not just about protecting artists' incomes today. It's about physically protecting and uncovering the history of the culture before it literally disappears into the ground.
Yeah, the report shifts from the contemporary arts directly into historical commemorations and heritage. And the underlying through line is entirely about what we as a society choose to save and what we allow to vanish.
And there is some heavy, literal excavation happening here.
Literally digging up the past.
Yeah. The sources note the ongoing late April commemorations of the Easter Rising. But then there's this incredible, visceral detail about the unearthing of history.
A mass grave.
Yes, the discovery of a mass graves of Irish immigrants in Pennsylvania in the United States. We are talking about people who fled famine or sought work, who died far from home in harsh conditions and were entirely lost to time.
And now their bones are literally being found and recognized.
It's incredibly moving. You also have new documentary work focusing on historical figures like the Fenian Joseph Poole.
And for context, a Fenian refers to a member of a 19th century Irish nationalist organization, a secret society dedicated to establishing an independent Irish republic.
Right.
So re-examining figures like Poole or excavating graves in Pennsylvania represents the macro level of heritage. These are the grand historical narratives, the sweeping, heavy stories of diaspora, rebellion, and systemic tragedy.
The things that naturally make it into the history book. But then the report contrasts that massive macro level with something incredibly hyper-local, the Closescape Project.
Closescape, yes.
This is a specialized project painstakingly working to document vanishing historic street signs right in the city of Dublin.
It's a fascinating initiative.
And at the same time, this small group is trying to save street signs. You have preparations underway for massive, globally exported celebrations.
Right, like the Milwaukee Irish Fest.
Exactly. We're talking about the 2026 Milwaukee Irish Fest over in the States, which draws tens of thousands of people, and the massive launch of the home of St. Patrick Festival 2026 up in Armagh.
The contrast there is striking, isn't it? It reveals our inherent biases about what deserves to be remembered.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Think about the duality of a nation that is launching documentaries about 19th century nationalists and literally digging up mass graves in Pennsylvania to honor its past.
And throwing massive, highly funded festivals in Milwaukee.
Right. But simultaneously having to launch a desperate grassroots project like Closescape just to save the typography on its own street corners.
Because it's just vanishing.
Yeah, these old street signs with their specific enamel and traditional Gaelic script, they are just being casually painted over or thrown in a municipal dumpster by city workers who don't realize what they're destroying.
And this raises an important question for anyone listening. What actually constitutes heritage?
Good question.
We are culturally conditioned to think of heritage as the big, loud, tragic, or triumphant things. The solemn commemorations of the Easter Rising, the massive exported festivals in Milwaukee. We assume heritage is the stuff that commands international attention and heavy government funding.
The things with the big marketing budgets and the bronze statues?
Precisely. But heritage is equally, if not more so, the mundane, ambient infrastructure of a place.
Like a street sign.
It is a street sign in Dublin.
Yeah.
It is the specific font used on a corner shop that has been there for 80 years. The Closescape Project highlights a terrifying vulnerability. The everyday visual language of a city can just vanish overnight if someone doesn't actively decide it is worth saving.
Wow, yeah.
Whether it is the specific technique of an uilleann piper sitting in a pub or the hand-painted letters on a brick wall, culture requires intentional, active preservation. Otherwise, it simply becomes invisible. It gets paved over.
It's almost like we develop blind spots for the culture that is right in front of our faces, because it is just the wallpaper of our everyday lives.
We take it for granted.
We really do. We will travel thousands of miles to celebrate a curated, polished version of it at a festival, but we walk right past the real thing as it slowly degrades on our own street corner.
And that brings the entire report together, tying right back to the independent artists we were just discussing.
Oh, how so?
A local indie artist playing the Workman's Club on a Tuesday night is the musical equivalent of that historic street sign.
Oh, I see.
They are the local, everyday texture of the culture. They aren't in a museum. They are out in the weather. If we don't actively preserve the economic environment they need to survive through things like the IMRO levy or functional support schemes, they will vanish just as quietly as a painted over sign.
That is a brilliant point, and it brings us completely full circle.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by looking at a music scene that refuses to sit behind museum glass. From the driving rosin-dusted traditional fiddles of Dylan Foley and Coleman Connolly, all the way to the provocative, boundary-pushing SL Trad tour.
And the indie sleaze discos.
Yes, acting like wild new software patches on ancient code. We followed the money to see the harsh realities of a broken supply chain, where a country exports its culture to 44 nations, while local artists get squeezed by global streaming algorithms.
And bureaucratic funding schemes that demand corporate metrics for art.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at the literal excavation of history. From immigrant graves in Pennsylvania to the desperate fight to save the ambient, everyday culture of Dublin's street signs.
It is a comprehensive, unfiltered portrait of a culture fighting to thrive, not just survive, in 2026.
It certainly is a testament to resilience.
And as we wrap up this exploration, I want to pose a question directly to you, the listener.
Go ahead.
As you navigate your own world and the media you enjoy, what stands out to you about how effortlessly you consume culture versus how much effort, friction, and sheer willpower it takes for someone behind the scenes to actually make, fund, and protect that culture?
That is the perfect question to leave off on. And to build on that, I want to bring us back to our opening thought and to that IMRO content levy we broke down earlier.
The culture tax.
Right. Think about that museum glass we mentioned at the very beginning.
Yeah.
If culture isn't a static museum exhibit, if it's a living, breathing organism, it's fiddlers, it's punks, it's storytellers, it's typography. It needs actual sustenance to stay alive.
It needs capital.
It needs capital. So think about that Spotify price hike on your phone. If preserving a nation's unique cultural voice required consumers to pay a direct mandatory culture tax on top of their global tech subscriptions money that bypassed the algorithm and went straight to the grassroots, would you pay it?
That's a tough question.
Or does true culture, no matter how loud, messy, or underfunded, always find a way to survive, regardless of the business model? Something to chew on until next time.
That's it for this episode of My Irish Radio, Music and Culture News. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can hear the best in Irish and Celtic music 24 hours a day at myirishradio.com. If you ever dreamed of sharing your favorite tunes and stories, now's your chance. Become one of the hosts. Host your own show right here on My Irish Radio. Just send us an email. It's easy as that. myirishradio@gmail.com. Until next time, it's Jamie Flanagan. Keep the music playing and keep Ireland in your heart.